holidays to all you what workers out there. Is that good? Can we call it, what do we call our audience is what I'm trying to think of.
The Wee Hive? I don't know, the Work
The
Hive?
Wee Hive. All my WWs out there. Um, anyway, as you can tell, it is the end of 2024 because we have officially lost our minds. Mike and I have both been full-time parenting our kids, which can make you go a little cuckoo during the holidays. I'm sure any other parent can sort of relate to that. But yeah, it's kind of wild, Mike. The other day I got an email from the company. I'm going to probably screw this up, but I think it's called Buzzsprout. That is the software that we use to basically upload our podcasts. And it was wild because I saw, they basically gave us kind of like similar to Spotify. It was like our version of Spotify Wrapped for what worked. We got to see, the numbers related to our downloads, our listeners, where they're coming from, all that sort of jazz. And it was really crazy just thinking about it was literally last year. I believe we did our first episode right around, I want to say it was December. Do you know when our first episode came out for What Worked? Was it December?
Yeah, it must have been this time last year,
Yeah.
December or January. I don't remember, but yeah, it's been 1 year.
It's been 1 year.
And 1 year and more than that in the making. So we've been working on it for probably 2-ish years in terms of ideation and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So it's cool to get our first call it season under our belt.
That's right. Season 1.
Yeah, and I think this season happened when we looked back at the episodes. A lot of the content had to do with sales. And so, yeah, I don't know if you have any moments from What Worked that come to mind, but a lot of mine are around sales, hiring, salespeople, how to get your first 10 customers. There are a couple things like that come to mind. Power of ADRs, we talked about that. So yeah, I think in this episode we have a reel of some of our highlights and moments from this season that are related to sales tips and tricks of 2024.
Yeah, and I think I definitely have a bunch of moments. I think about, we had the great opportunity to interview some of our good friends. I think about episodes like Bentley's episode. We've known Bentley for forever, and it was really cool. Not just getting to have that conversation with him. I learned so much about someone that I've known for a very long time. What was really cool about that episode was hearing from all of our friends. I got hundreds of text messages, basically people saying, hey, I listened to the Bentley episode. I had no idea, these are mutual friends of ours. They had no idea these different things about his story, and they really enjoyed it. One of the coolest parts about What Worked has been it's this way of honestly kind of keeping up with my network, where I'll hear from a lot of people that I haven't talked to in a long time, and they're like, it's like we just had a conversation because they're like, I was listening to you and Mike talk about a lot of things related to sales. But you're absolutely right. Sales was the big theme of 2024 for What Worked. Makes sense, given that so many companies are struggling with, customer acquisition, top of funnel, etc. I am very excited to continue What Worked into 2025, and I'm sure that our, theme of 2025 is probably going to reflect what's going on in the world today. So on that note, all you What Workeders out there, still workshopping that audience name, please enjoy this best of highlight reel, and we'll see you in 2025. Baby.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Founders usually do a good job of selling because they understand the problems that they're fixing, because they've usually created out of a need that they had themselves, and they have the conviction, the ultimate conviction. Nobody believes in it more than them.
I think kind of storytelling in my line of work anyway, that's always been, I think, one of the things has gotten me through, kind of helped me overcome some shortcomings, is how can you have a vision and share it? So in those early days, do your co-founders agree with what your vision of the company is? Can you illustrate it? Can you tell them why certain things are? So I'd say the first year was just, here's the vision, here's why these things do what they do, having a lot of back and forth, being very collaborative. And once the product was there, it was, can we find the right way to position this? Can we find the audience? Can we create the product market fit? And that has a whole bunch of different storytelling, because again, we had to kind of morph the story a few times. And once you find it, recognizing that the way this is going to be successful is if you are doing more listening than you do talking, which I know seems surprising. I did listen occasionally, but was really kind of focused on, okay, who are these customers? What do I know or not know? And how can I learn as much as possible? And then it morphed right into sales mode. I think for the first 3 years, it was go, 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 be the face, listen to the client, relay the feedback, and just hammer, tell the story and perfect the pitch. And I'd say that was probably like the golden age of me, because again, I tend to be a smaller thinker than I'd like to admit, where it was very easy. It was clients come in, I show them the product, they say yes, I pass them on. And it was like this, very fulfilling moment as part of the company. But as a CEO, obviously, you have to become bigger than the individual contributor.
We work with some early stage startups. We love working with them. They're doing some of the most interesting things. It's exciting for us. And also, hey, we're hoping that they grow and we can grow with them. And so founder-led sales used to cap out at the founder's bandwidth. But what we've discovered is that we can expand their bandwidth by giving them an ADR or two that can essentially free up their time to oftentimes go back to work on product, go back to develop relationships and partnerships in the space they're working in, and do a lot of the hands-on sales that they have to do in the beginning to get their first 10, 20, 30 customers,
Yes.
just beyond their personal networks, and essentially give them more time to build more pipeline, probably either achieve or get closer to product market fit before they make their first go-to-market hire, their founding AE or that head of sales type person.
The common challenges I hear from people: landing your first 10 customers and finding product market fit. And I've worked with some clients where we do a 3-month engagement, have a ton of conversations, and then they say, you know what, I don't have product market fit. This is super helpful. I need to go back into build mode and pivot. Second common one is, like, most founders are technical. I'd say 80% plus, and most haven't sold before. So if you're just able to be a true business partner to them and teach them how to sell, like what best in class sales looks like, everything from like, what's your ICP? How do you create a list of accounts and titles? How do you create messaging on which channels to engage those and have them take meetings? And once you have a meeting, how do you run a meeting? Like, simple stuff that makes a big difference. And then the third one is how to hire the right founding salespeople. Sometimes founders don't know what to look for. There's a lot of conflicting advice out there. I mean, salespeople are generally good at selling themselves. And also, this is a very hard role if you're going to be the founding salesperson at any startups.
When it came to sales and hiring Jose as the first salesperson, that's because I started having no voice, because I'd be on demos for, 8-9 hours a day straight. Keith started stepping in. Keith is stepping away from doing design. He's starting to do a lot of sales. We're like, hey, that can't continue. We're starting to get so many clients, we can't support all them through. Mariah was doing our accounting and our customer success and the financials and all this other stuff, and that couldn't withstand. So I think we always tried to say, hey, how can we push this to the limit in the early days and really make sure we absolutely need this person versus, hey, this would be nice.
I feel like founders oftentimes say, in order for us to hit our numbers, we just need to hire a ton of AEs or a ton of sales reps. And I oftentimes try to combat that as much as possible, because you don't know what you don't know. Do you have product to market fit? Do you there's so many things that go into that process in order to really make a sound decision like that. Or they say that we need a revenue leader in order to do these things. And I kind of counter that and say, you might just need a founding sales member, like a founding AE that can document things and isn't afraid to try and A/B test things along the way. And that can get you very, very far. One solid AE and one solid SDR, if that's the model, can get you so far before you actually have to hire a revenue leader. And the proof is, like, with Textio, that's what we did. Like, we had 2 AEs and an SDR, and we really had a lot of great success from that standpoint. I'm not to say it works all the time. It just works. Like, that is a model that I try to follow, is like, why do you think that you need this? Did the board tell you that you need these people in place? Have you done the math to actually understand that it's going to be costly, to hire all these people?
What do you look for in a first rep? And also, that's a sale too, right? Selling that first rep. How do you convince someone to join a ship when the cupboards are, kind of the drawers are all barren. There's nothing there.
So much goes into this. How do you convince someone to join a ship? First, like you have to be really open with it, like what the role is, the ambiguity to it, how hard it's going to be, and you have to have those conversations with the candidate during the cycle. I listened to a Lemkin podcast, which was good about hiring your first few reps, and I agree with some of the stuff he said. For me, I always look to hire the first rep as someone I know. Why? It's a known quantity. I've worked with this person. Like that ramp is faster. And the best VPs will have a bench of people that they'll bring with them. Great to lay the foundation, not great to scale because you want diversity of thought and everything else. So like, cool, get your first 2 reps that you know, or your first rep that's a reference. Like at AirKit, we hired Connor Candido. Guy's a force to be reckoned with. Doesn't take no for an answer. Has seen multiple startups. Tremendous business acumen. Great relationship builder, both externally and internally. Understands technology. Connor was able to prove that AirKit could be sold. You could sell a lot of AirKit in a year to a lot of big companies. So you need that person to build the foundation. Because if you hire your first rep, I tell people this all the time, and they don't overachieve their number, it's a really tough thing to build a culture on. Versus if you have 2 reps that are over 120 to 150%, make a bunch of money, you're like, hey, everyone, we're hiring more people. Here's the success that we can point to. And you have a skinny playbook that shows what great looks like and what works. And then it's just about finding the right people and onboarding them and enabling them.
The cost of a bad sales hire is, there's a lot of different numbers out there, but when you really factor in the soft costs like opportunity cost and having a bad person on payroll who's just not going to make quota, and the fact that that doesn't let you hire your next sales hire, it's somewhere around 20 times annual salary. So, even on a low conservative estimate, a bad sales hire, a missed sales hire is going to cost a couple $100,000. So think about the last time you spent a couple $100,000. If I don't know, maybe you have a Bugatti, but if you've ever bought a home, you certainly spend some time researching, getting ready, understanding what you look like. But then we go to make the sales hire and we spend 5 minutes getting ready for it and we wing it. And so we end up missing all the things we're looking for. So spending that time to prepare and look through their resume. You can look through a resume and start finding red flags just by doing a glance, or you're going to find some clarifying questions of, was the number 1 rep in the company? Okay, but what does that mean? How many reps were there? Was there 2 reps and you were number 1? If my revenue last year was $6 million and you're looking for somebody who's able to hunt and bring in net new opportunity, how much of that was net new revenue from new clients versus existing clients? And a lot of times you'll hear, oh, that was all from existing clients. That's a red flag. That's a big red flag. So how do you answer all these questions? You have the search model, you have an idea of what you're looking for. What you're really trying to understand is, if we were to take this search model and put it in front of us, which questions do we ask to find out if this person is really going to be the right fit? Some of the questions are quick, like, do you have experience using Salesforce? Yeah, well, tell me about it. Tell me where you learned, how much time you had, blah, blah, blah. That's a pretty simple one. But again, if we go back to the new revenue versus, revenue from existing clients, you're definitely going to want to ask that. And you'll get some answers. Some people may know you're looking for net new and they'll say, oh, well, 50% of that's net new. All right, so how many new clients was that comprised of? And you'll get some answer. Okay, great. What was the average deal size that you're working with? And so as you start weaving through this and going 3-4 levels deep, you're going to find inconsistencies.
Yeah. So is this usually done like in one conversation, Mike?
Yet no. I want to say yes. So if I'm helping a client interview a salesperson, there's a screening process, and you'll save a lot of time by just doing a 10-minute phone screen to weed people out, or even better, having somebody else in your organization just do a phone screen. The first interview it's probably going to be 90 minutes because you want to dig through. You want to find out, is this really the right person? And then I think a really good best practice is have people from other parts of the company, if you have other parts of the company, do the interview. But here's the secret, because people say, oh, well, we'll have another department interview them, but they ask their questions, whatever. They don't, they're just going off of what they think. And that's the biggest thing. People make sales hires, or all hires in general, subjectively. Do I like this person? Are they like me? Do I feel good? And there's so many biases that can go wrong. The I'm desperate for someone bias, where you start ignoring the red flags. But if you share the search document with other people in your team, they're going to be able to ask the same questions and look for the same things, and they may hear different things. And then everybody can have a debrief at the end and say, based on your conversation with candidate A, did you really feel like she has the ability to go out and hunt for brand new opportunities? Do you feel like they're organized enough to manage an 18-month sales cycle? And some companies have an 18-month sales cycle, and some people just aren't organized enough. I mean, like, if you ask me how well I would do handling an 18-month sales cycle, not good. That's high levels of organization aren't my thing. So I would not be the right person for that job. But if everybody's looking for the same thing, everybody's asking for the same questions, you're going to get a lot of consistency.
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to say, you touched on something really interesting, is that the guidance. I'm a big fan of the interview by committee is probably not the right term for it, but having your peers at the company, especially the people that are going to be working with that salesperson a lot. I love having them interview them. My intentions are twofold. I, of course, want to find out if the candidate's the right person, but I also want to hold on to the card later on when that person says, I don't like that sales guy or sales girl or salesperson. I'll be like, well, you were a part of hiring them. So, these red flags that you're suddenly pointing out, you had the opportunity to screen them. And I think it's really good. You're giving them buy-in. You're giving them an opportunity to opt into that person. So when they work with them later on, which is really great. And the guidance piece, I totally agree with Mike. I find that, especially with non-sales folks in the organization, they're coming with a lot of bias. The funniest one to me would be like, I didn't like that person. I don't like that guy. They were too salesy. And I'm like, right, we're hiring a salesperson. So yeah, so kind of giving them, an understanding of, hey, here's what we're looking for. And I don't know if you feel like this is a good best practice, but we would often give other folks in the organization some specific things to dig into. We'd say, hey, coming from your position within the company, I'd love your thoughts on what their true technical expertise is. Do you feel like they're competent in these areas? And I felt like that yielded some really, really great notes versus just thumbs up, thumbs down.
When it comes to the sales culture, historically, it is one of those things where people think that they need to act a certain way in order to get things done. And it comes off as, just, it kind of comes off as like being a jerk. And I'm like, you don't necessarily have to be. Like, if you actually just listen to people, you can have a competitive mindset. Like, I love competition, internal, external competition. I love that. But it should also come from a place of how do I lift up the rest of the team? Am I sharing knowledge with the team of what I've tried and what has worked and what hasn't, versus like, I'm the best, I'm always going to be the best, I don't care about what you all do. While sure, you will probably find success in that, wouldn't it be so much better if everyone had success though? Because then the company's evaluation goes up, ultimately you'll probably make more money, things of that nature. So
you're hitting on something here for me, because I'm just thinking back to my experience at a fast growing startup. And I remember a lot of our executives were obsessed with the cultures of certain companies. They loved, like, I want to say it was Bain or something like that. They were obsessed with Bain, and they were like, Bain is ruthless. Like, you come in, you have to kill or be killed and all this stuff. And I was like, hey man, like, we got a lot of people coming here and they're coming from really toxic environments. And one of the things they say about why they love working here is that it's not toxic. So maybe we don't try to make it toxic. We read a little book called Predictable Revenue by Aaron Ross, which, if you're looking at a sales ops person, a salesperson's, bookshelf, I got a bookshelf here behind me, I'm sure it's on there. it's a must read if you are in sales, right? And Aaron Ross, for anybody who doesn't know the story. Aaron Ross was, really the meat of it was that he joined Salesforce in their time of rapid growth. You can kind of trace his time at Salesforce with their crazy hockey stick. The company was not small when he joined, but he took them into, call it, unicorn status, hundreds of millions and then billions in revenue, right? And there was a specific approach that he took to sales that a lot of people have now, sort of taken on, and we took it on at TaskUs as well. This concept was that sales before, what you saw with sales is the entire sales process would typically live within a single role, right? You'd have your like classic quota carrying salesperson. They would be responsible for sourcing their own business. They'd be responsible for, pitching that business and nurturing it, and then ultimately, winning the deal and then handing it off to somebody in operations, client services, et cetera, right? And the idea was that Aaron Ross really focused on was he said, if you look at that, that's a lot of different tasks and functions to live within one person. And it's like this concept of like, if you're putting together, I know you and I are big basketball fans, right? It's like when I think about incredible players, right? I think about like, you're a Miami Heat guy, right? Dwayne Wade, right? Dwayne Wade's incredible. A team of Dwayne Wade's is not going to win a championship. You need these different kind of role players, right? You need your shot blockers, you need your facilitators, all the above, right? And that's why those winning teams are so effective. It's because people typically are specialists. They're really good at certain things. And that was that same concept that Aaron Ross talked about. So what he looked at was he said, let's look at this entire process. And really from Aaron Ross, from Predictable Revenue, he was one of the first pioneers of the SDR role. He said, hey, this entire function that is focused on opening doors, that should live within one person because that's a skill set that requires expertise, it requires tremendous focus, and it requires like a full-time commitment to that job. And that's where Salesforce's SDR program is legendary. They take people that have no sales experience, they make them into incredible salespeople, and a lot of their success comes from the fact that they're helping people to be laser focused on this really, really valuable skill set. As a founder, I find forecasting very hard in our early stage business. And, when it comes to sales, that's so important in terms of determining what the comp should look like. What are the targets they should be able to hit? So you mentioned getting to the 120%, which is effectively right above quota. Is there any way to think about that besides do you just kind of give them a softball? Like, what do you think about in terms of getting the right number for the reps, those initial reps?
So happy you asked this because so many don't know this and we didn't talk about this.
Yeah.
Number that every founder needs to think about is what are my close rates? And that's from a qualified opportunity to deal one. What's my win rate? Win
Yeah.
rates range between 15 and let's say like 50%.
Right.
Okay. And let's just say your win rate's 25% as an example. That's your win rate. The next number you need to know is your pipeline coverage. The pipeline coverage is the inverse of your win rate. So it's 4x. So I know as a rep, if my goal every month is 100K and our win rates are historically 25%, if I don't have 400K of active pipeline in a given month, I cannot reliably and confidently hit my number. And then you can roll that up across the team. But that's a common thing that founders need to be tracking. And the last thing is if your win rate's under 15%, do not go build more pipeline. Go figure out how to increase your win rates because it's tough to build a business off of 15% win rates, especially when the top of the funnel is even worse than that.
Somewhere there's a salesperson that's yelling like preach to this part, because I feel like as a founder, and I don't know if this is the same thing with your clients, but you're in this constant battle when it comes to pipeline and trying to figure out what your sales metrics your KPIs should be. You're in this battle between what is realistic with sales and also where you just want to go aspirationally as a business.
What I've experienced in the past few years is that the sales landscape and how sales gets done can change rapidly in a blink of an eye. So I'm curious to know like what you were seeing then compared to like what you're seeing now, and maybe how that feeds into what you guys are building at Vector today.
Absolutely. Sales landscape is absolutely changing rapidly. And we're seeing it today with the consolidation of tools. Clary and Gong, Outreach, SalesLoft, all these tools are continuing to be consolidated. Everyone wants to be the major end-to-end platform. So what we continue to see back at that point in time was just, it started small, little inefficiencies where you would start breaking down sales reps from the top third, middle third, bottom third. And you'd realize pretty quickly there's something that the top third reps are doing that no one else is. And then you start to try to pinpoint, what is it? What are they doing? Is it a piece of software they're using? Is it a technique? Are they asking one specific extra question? Do they know the technology and the actual product better? Do they know the industry that they're selling to better? And you start trying to ask all those questions. Why are they regularly top third? And why is everyone else not the top third? And obviously there's swings in between those categories, but that's where we would really kind of hone our skills on, because as a sales leader, the best thing you can do as a sales leader is try to up level those middle third to top third. How do you get as many more middle third into that bucket as possible? And if you can replicate something that someone else is doing, that's a very easy change. You go do it. The middle third to mid, or the bottom to middle to top, that's a little bit harder of a struggle. And so now you just at least have to, start with the smaller changes. How do I get someone who's in that middle to top, and then I can go work on the bottom third at that point in time. But identifying those habits and that regular cadence of what someone is doing at the top is a pretty big challenge, because usually you're not, as a manager, managing them that highly, because they're pretty self-sufficient. And so you don't necessarily see every little day-to-day thing that they do.
Are the basics, the foundational things still the same, or has it really changed drastically and we're like in a new day here, and sales is done differently?
I think probably more similar than different. If any two things have changed, it's like sales is a bit harder than it was in like the heydays of people making huge checks when everyone's just buying software and people like coming back down to like reality. And then, yeah, the outbound is dead thing. Like there's definitely some truth to that. I think the future of outbound will look like you'll have a centralized marketing / sales ops team that controls all the outbound messages that are being sent, and they're personalized because you're able to do that with new tools like Clay and all these other things. And you'll have much smaller SDR teams, like maybe 20% of the size of an SDR team, to do that personalization or to make phone calls on people that engage, or to, nudge along and do the work and be more strategic. And I've seen that happen at a buddy's company in Q4. He did that move and cut SDR headcount by 80% and had better metrics. So that I think is going to happen, because SDRs are hard to hire. They're hard to have a promotion path. And at the end of the day, the channels are just inundated and saturated. So like, I don't see any new channels coming out. So how do you punch through the noise? Be more strategic. Actually, if anything's worked in the last 4 years, it's like sniper shots on your prospects. Like being
What do you mean by that? What's a sniper shot?
Like pick a list of 50 accounts that an AE and FCR wants to go after, get to know them really well, and then find your best shot in every single time, whether it's an investor, founder intro, very relevant, personalized value add, and things like that. And that works for us. Like that's how we closed all these big logos at AirKit without having anyone know us. Everything was outbound.
That's cool. The non-scalable stuff, right? There was like a time where we're all talking about how do we scale this? How do we automate this and do more? And now it's like we've kind of come back. It's like, how do you just snipe?
We love outbound prospecting. We've always been an outbound prospecting company. That landscape changes all the time. I'm very tempted to follow the crowd and try to figure out ways to use AI for that. But I'm very hesitant because I receive these emails and they are garbage trash. It's written by a robot.
Yeah.
It's like, hello, Tyler, I noticed that you live in Los Angeles and you have a staffing company and I'm a robot and you like USC because you went there. And I'm like, this is a first day SDR could write something better.
Exactly. Yeah.
You're,
so I don't know what
you're
your thoughts
either
are there.
describing that really well, Tyler, or you're completely insulting like a fresh SDR.
Hey,
Just sent you that email.
Steve at Rippling, I promise I don't hate you, but you got to stop using those bots, dog. I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
Sort of.
Sort of. Yeah. I get those all the time. So totally know what you mean. I'd say you touched on a lot of good points there, Tyler. Like, there are certain things that I wouldn't even go so far as to say, like, it's underperforming, right? Like what you describe of like SDR, sort of like outbound work. Like, there are ways of doing even that well, right? Like, I've seen companies that can make really compelling, like, you have to take a second to, like, maybe if you squint, it's almost also like generative AI images, right? Where you squint a little bit and you're like, oh yeah, there's something going on with like the hand or the badge, has weird characters. But like, if you looked at generative AI images 2 years ago, it looked like it was drawn with Microsoft Paint, right?
Sure.
2 years later, they're
Now
like realistic
awesome.
enough. Yeah.
It's fast.
And like,
yeah.
I've seen live action, like people making like an Elon Musk, like I could join this call, look like Elon Musk, and like I would be talking, and it would be like his motions of his facial motions and stuff. So it's like the things that seem a bit farther out now, like the outbound one, they may not be that far out for a while, right? Like that might be, give it 6 months, give it 10 months. The other side of that is like, you have to just be really intentional about how you're going to design the test case for those and then iterate off of it, right? Like, I think there's a lot of laziness, not to be too negative, but like sometimes when folks are lazy with rolling out AI, they expect it to be like, oh, I'm going to input this thing, I'm going to click, enter, and then I'm going to do like, it's just going to totally manage all outbound. I don't have to worry about it. You approach it in that way and you're not iterating, you're not changing the prompt, you're not adjusting based on what the output looks like, then you're going to have those situations where it's like, then you're just, scattershotting it, right? You're hoping that you're sending it out to 10,000 people and like 2 people out of those 10,000 are not going to see it as a bot and they're going to reply. And like, I don't know, like that's not how I want to do business. And I think that that's an important thing to keep in mind, right? Like your brand is still important. How you roll these things out and cautiously and in an experimental fashion is important. And then iterating based on it, right? When new models come out or when you get output that's not, up to your standards, making sure that it's, tweaked in a way that either it's then becomes useful or you shelve it, for a few months until something better comes along. But I think that's really important.
So you came full circle, and I think that's what you're referring to. It's like we're coming back to the old school traditional ways to break through the noise that's being created by AI.
Yeah, I've got a comparison with that. In old school, anybody who is listening to this who's in sales is going to be, again, nodding their head vigorously when I say 2 little words called quick question, right? Quick question. For anybody who's ever done cold sales emails, you know that quick question is the highest performing subject line of all time in cold sales emails, right? There was a time, Mike, when you could just blast quick question to 1,000 people and you would get an absurd amount of replies because people would be like, oh, I see this subject line, it says quick question, it's just a quick question from who? I guess I'll reply to this, right? My point is that in the same way as AI, the problem with AI is that AI is available to everybody. And AI is only as good as the data sets that AI is trained on. And guess what? With all these AI tools, you name it, the who's who of AI tools, they're all working off the same data sets. Meaning that if Mike wants to use AI and Mike's biggest competitor down the street wants to use AI, guess what? There is no competitive advantage. And in the same way with quick question, I remember somebody famously, famous to me, they posted on they posted on LinkedIn a screenshot and they searched in their email inbox quick question. And there was like hundreds. It was insane. I think it was like 300 plus emails with that subject line quick question. And the person was like, obviously they're being prospected by a ton of salespeople. They were like, hey, quick PSA to salespeople. Stop using quick question. You're not unique. I see it all the time. Now they're like, I literally made a filter for quick question. It just goes right into spam, right? And so in the same way, I think with AI, it works for a period of time, just like quick question does. But I think it's a very short shelf life to use that because you're up against everybody else who has the same data, the same tools.
Yeah, but I would say like we're not bearish on AI. I would say quite the opposite.
No.
We just
it'll get better.
Today we don't see AI being an effective replacement for an ADR or SDR or AE, but our ADRs are very effectively leveraging AI to make a lot of their jobs more efficient, a lot of their responsibilities more efficient. So you think about some of this more superficial research before they get to the part that they have to do with a human touch and the critical business analysis. We're leveraging AI tools. So part of our training now is actually a lot of new tools that they can use to get to that quick point where they can take over and apply what they've learned in the academy when it comes to business analysis. So yeah, the coupling of an ADR and AI tools is becoming very popular for us. Thank you very much, and call it a pod.
Thank you for having me, Mike and Tyler.